Telling stories and listening to them has been the primary instinct of humans. Many of these stories have been passed on to us from generations and also from across cultures. It is surprising to note that even during the old days of minimal or no interface of communication across countries, almost all civilizations had common ideas and themes in their stories. Literary critics call it mythical archetypes. Our ancestors were puzzled by the secrets of the universe, life, and death. They did not have scientific evidence or terms to understand these and also explain to others. However, based on their understanding, they created stories that somehow try to explain the occurrence of many things. Many of these stories also have variations while at the same time focusing on a similar theme. Studying the stories spread across cultures in the oral tradition helps us understand specific cultural variations in the macro scheme of universal concerns. We discussed in class the story of Orpheus and Eurydice that strike the same notes with cultural differences in the story of Satyavan and Savitri. While one ends on the unfulfilled wish, the other has a happy end. We also had a discussion on the story of Styx and Oedipus that has similarities with the stories of Nachiketa or Yaksha asking questions to Yudhisthira in Mahabharata. We also discussed the similarities in the stories of time travel as in the case of Kukudmi and Revati and stories of Rip Van Winkle or the Cave of Seven Sleepers. If we compare Greek and Hindu stories, there is a lot of similarity in thematic patterns. The story of Icarus in Greek myths cautions humans not to fly too high. Icarus flies high and his wings get melted in sunlight. In Hindu oral tradition, Jatayu the bird also flew high in misadventure, and had not his brother Sampati spread his wing, Jatayu would have lost his wing. In Greek myths, Zeus is the god of the gods and uses thunderbolt. In Indian stories, Indra is the god of gods and uses thunderbolt. We also discussed how the parent-children relations have archetypal similarities and differences as in the story of Oedipus and Bhishma. In Greek myths, sons usurped the privilege of a father while in Indian classics it is the other way round. This might be, as we discussed in class, out of the social charter that collectively people formed during those days. A similar pattern can be traced in the story of Yayati also. We also saw how the duration of Pandavas in exile and the Battle of Troy is 14 years. Before the Battle of Kurukshetra starts, Arjuna is reluctant to fight the war, and in Iliad, we find Achilles reluctant to fight. The variation in these versions is the reason for reluctance. In Mahabharata, Arjuna laments the death of Abhimanyu and vows to kill Jayadratha. In Iliad, Achilles laments the death of Patroclus and vows to kill Hector. At the time of Duryodhana's birth, evil omens predicted that he will bring about the destruction of his entire clan. In the Iliad, the same prophecy is made at the time of Paris' birth. As Dhritarashtra is pampering Duryodhana and is ignoring his errors, King Priam is pampering Paris and ignoring his errors. We discussed how Thetis tried to make Achilles' body invulnerable by dipping him in the river Styx, but as she held him by his heels, Achilles' heels remained vulnerable. There is a similar story in Mahabharata where Gandhari wanted to remove her blindfold and make Duryodhana's body invulnerable, but Krishna confuses Duryodhana to cover half of his body and thus, Duryodhana's thighs remain vulnerable. Humanity has a collective or racial unconscious, and thus, the similarities we find in myths across the countries. You may want to find out more of these similarities and elaborate on them.